Two female inmates are pregnant after they had sex with another inmate at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women in Clinton. That's the Department of Corrections. Last year, Edna Mahan began housing transgender inmates who identify as female. That's after a lawsuit filed by a trans woman who was forced to live in men's prisons.
Don't want you to see. It shows an everyday interaction between officers and inmates at a New Jersey prison. Just getting a camera inside is a huge security breach. Getting the tape out even tougher. You might find it tough to watch.
Well, new accusations are being lodged at the state's Department of Corrections, this time involving the Southwood State Prison in Cumberland County. Family of currently incarcerated inmates are accusing the prison of abuse and inhumane treatment, rallying today demanding answers and accountability.
Behind New Jersey's locked gates and razor wire, a few prisons have earned a reputation for constant chaos. Inmates and officers alike speak of them like haunted battlegrounds, places where dark corridors, overcrowded cell blocks, and relentless tension turn everyday life into a fight for survival. According to a 2023 Watchdog report, nearly 2/3 of all inmate grievances came from just 3 facilities: Southwood State Prison Bridgeton, Northern State Prison Newark, and New Jersey State Prison Trenton. Violence and abuse dominate the complaints, with 840 personal safety reports last year alone, covering everything from assaults to excessive force by staff. These prisons top the state's danger list, not just because of numbers, but because of the brutal stories behind them. Below, we step inside each notorious facility and take a hard look at what life and survival really looks like behind their walls.
His family says the voice you hear screaming belongs to 22-year-old Jameel Parsons, an inmate at Northern State Prison in Newark. They say they haven't heard from him for months, and after seeing what they believe is him being pulled down the steps, they're worried. Videotape officials don't want you to see. It shows an everyday interaction between officers and inmates at a New Jersey prison. Just getting a camera inside is a huge security breach. Getting the tape out even tougher. You might find it tough to watch.
What you about to witness is not only a rare look at what goes on within one of the many prisons within America, but what you're about to witness is also a rare look at what goes on within one of the many solitary confinement units within the prisons of America. The depths of prison, the bowels of prison, the bowels of life. This is about as low in life as you could possibly get.
Opened in 1987 to ease overcrowding at Trenton, Northern State Prison looms over Newark's west side, tucked along the highway. The massive square facility, marked by a central high-rise tower, has earned a reputation for constant tension. Inmates joke that its curved entrance looks like a launch pad for despair. Northern holds offenders at every custody level, from open dorms to maximum security lockdowns, but across the board, danger thrives. Contraband flows steadily. Cell phones, weapons, even homemade water pumps. Guards routinely uncover hidden weapons caches, and the underground economy keeps anxiety levels high. The risks are real and often deadly. In December 2024, the New Jersey Attorney General's office launched an investigation into the death of 46-year-old David Silva, who died in the infirmary nearly a week after a violent encounter with correctional officers. Meanwhile, past Latin King, Hit Squad plots revealed Northern was a planned site for a deadly gang ambush in 2020, one that DOC agents narrowly prevented. Ombudsman reports consistently rank Northern alongside Trenton and Southwoods as one of the state's most volatile prisons. In just the past year, hundreds of inmates reported assaults, brutality, and violent clashes. Watchdogs have detailed claims of flooded punitive cells, drug labs built into light sockets, and guards who sometimes lose control of their own units. Northern State runs like a powder keg, a constant, high-pressure grind where any spark, a surge, a fight, a missed warning, can ignite full-blown chaos.
Calls for justice outside Southwood State Prison here in Bridgeton after disturbing claims of inmate mistreatment. Social advocates and family members say a recent water outage at the facility forced prisoners to live in degrading conditions for days.
What we were told, because I didn't actually get inside to see it, was that when the water went down, that the inmates were required to relieve themselves in plastic bags and things of this nature. There were some porta potty brought in, like one for the whole institution. Which, that doesn't work.
Sitting off a rural turnpike near Vineland, Southwood State Prison is New Jersey's largest correctional facility, housing the biggest inmate population in the state. On the surface, it looks modern. Rows of numbered concrete buildings, new guard towers, and heavy security fencing. But inside, violence simmers just beneath the surface. Southwoods holds a mix of maximum and medium security prisoners, and its restorative housing unit meant for segregation has earned a darker reputation. Former inmates describe it as a gladiator pit where fights erupt under the watch of guards. In late 2022, the state ombudsman received alarming reports from inmates alleging that officers in the RHU were encouraging fights, pushing prisoners to attack each other. By January 2023, 5 complaints were forwarded to Internal Affairs, citing security staff using excessive force and encouraging violence. Although the Department of Corrections denied the existence of any fight club, the accounts from behind the walls told a different story, one of fear, manipulation, and constant threat. One former inmate called the RHU a snake pit, where even a wrong head count could make someone a target. Corruption has only deepened the dangers. In 2018, a senior corrections officer was indicted for smuggling opioid painkillers into the prison in exchange for cash, using his keys and position to bypass security. His arrest exposed vulnerabilities not just in contraband control, but in the entire culture of trust inside the prison. And he wasn't alone. Southwoods has seen multiple staff arrests for smuggling and misconduct in recent years. Inmates at Southwoods don't just fear each other, they often fear the very people tasked with protecting them. Overcrowding and chronic understaffing mean basic routines, like walking to the chow hall or yard, can quickly turn violent. Watchdogs keep Southwoods under close scrutiny, but inside, it remains a powder keg, a place where any wrong move can ignite chaos.
What's your name?
Name, Bridget.
Bridget, what's your name now? What's your name now?
Bridget.
Say it loud. You happy to be Bridget. Look at me and tell me your name. Look at me in my eyes. That's right. Look at me. Turn all the way around. What's your name?
Bridget.
Who the who you belong to today, right? Don't make me break the mother.
That's right.
Stick your tongue in his mouth.
Who you belong to, you mother, like you do. Now turn around and pay attention.
10 years ago, on the night before Thanksgiving, inmates seized control of 2 Rahway State Prison wings. The superintendent and 5 guards were taken hostage. From a command post near the prison, former Governor William Cahill negotiated an agreement with the inmates. The riot ended 24 hours after it began. The inmates had stabbed and beaten up the warden, but no one else was seriously hurt.
About an hour north of Trenton sits East Jersey State Prison, better known by its old name, Rahway State. The sprawling facility, marked by its towering dome, once a chapel, and endless rows of cell blocks, was once considered a model of modern incarceration. But years of overcrowding, budget cuts, and a hardening inmate population have stripped away that image. Rahway now houses some of New Jersey's most dangerous offenders, including those in its special treatment unit. The general population wings are filled with inmates serving long bids for violent crimes like robbery and assault. Inside, the atmosphere is tense and overarmed. Cells often remain closed even during daytime hours, just to keep rival factions apart. One former guard described long corridors where men shout threats through steel doors, each waiting for the smallest opportunity to strike if a guard slips up. That tension turned into real violence on New Year's Eve in 2016. Correctional Officer Daniel Campione was escorting inmates when one prisoner launched a sudden attack, punching him repeatedly in the head. Campione had to be hospitalized with serious injuries, and his recovery stretched for months. It was just one example of the kind of explosive violence Rahway officers face regularly. Rahway's reputation for stabbings and hidden weapons is well earned. Inmates have long manufactured shanks in secret, and gang sets like the Bloods, Latin Kings, and others control cell blocks like mini territories. Officers know better than to move alone through a unit, and if they do, they stay on constant high alert. Even minor disputes can escalate fast, sometimes ending in bloodshed. Violence at Rahway has even had ripple effects beyond its walls. In one grim case, an inmate who had previously stabbed an officer at Rahway later deleted a correctional sergeant in Trenton State Prison. Incidents like these, a dangerous Rahway's population remains. Adding to the complexity, Rahway's grounds also include the Adult Diagnostic and Treatment Center, a high-security prison for New Jersey's most serious sex offenders. It has its own fences, towers, and strict surveillance protocols. Inmates' families describe the environment as almost military, constant monitoring, strict movements, and the sound of shouting traveling easily down dim corridors. Though it may not draw headlines as often as Trenton or South Woods, East Jersey State Prison remains one of New Jersey's most dangerous lockups, a place where violence is always just a breath away.
Two female inmates at a supposedly all-women's prison in New Jersey have just become pregnant. You wonder how that happened? Well, it turns out those women had sexual encounters with another inmate who was a biological man passing as a woman. Now, some people predicted that this would happen, and they were laughed at, mocked, and attacked as bigots.
Though the story that's happening in New Jersey is obviously horrible for so many reasons. We need to not have men being housed in women's prisons. So the entire medical establishment in the United States has been captured by so-called trans ideology. And what I really want all Americans across the political spectrum to understand is that trans is not a civil rights movement to protect a marginalized community of people. It is a multi-trillion-dollar industry that is
violent incident last year at New Jersey's troubled Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women has resulted in indictments against 14 corrections officers. A grand jury yesterday voted to indict the officers in connection with the actions that occurred in the early hours of January 12, 2021. The state attorney general's office says on that date, inmates were forcibly removed from their cells. Some were beaten. 2 women were severely injured. The AG's office says the officers took these actions following escalating tensions with some inmates.
3 prison guards are now facing misconduct charges for a violent attack on at least 6 female inmates. New Jersey's Attorney General says one of the women was punched 28 times and claims the guards tried to cover up the attack at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women by filing false reports.
Years ago, Governor Murphy ordered the beleaguered Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women to close following numerous allegations of sexual abuse and violence against the women incarcerated there. Well, that closing process has begun after nearly 75 women were moved to a satellite location last year.
Even women's prisons aren't immune to dark chapters, and Edna Mahan Correctional Facility proves it. Nestled on the grounds of an old asylum in rural Hunterdon County, Edna Mahan houses New Jersey's female inmates in a mix of crumbling brick dorms and newer concrete blocks. Violence and misconduct have haunted the prison for years, but what happened in January 2021 pushed it into the national spotlight. According to court documents, tactical officers stormed a cell block without warning, dragging women into hallways and beating them mercilessly. Security footage captured the assaults, guards punching, kicking, and even using gas against inmates locked in their own cells. Prosecutors later indicted 15 corrections officers, charging them with assault, misconduct, and conspiracy. 2 women were seriously injured. State officials made clear this wasn't a sanctioned use of force. It was a brutal attack on people already under state protection. The state has a responsibility to protect individuals in our custody, the Attorney General said at the time, vowing that those responsible would face justice. But the 2021 beating was just the latest scandal. Before that, At least 14 officers and supervisors had already been charged with sexual assault, abuse, or misconduct against inmates. The result is a prison steeped in fear. Women inside Edna Mahan often see guards not as protectors, but as potential threats. Activists point out that conditions remain grim: frequent understaffing, violence between inmates, and a general atmosphere of mistrust. The tactics inside Edna often seem more vindictive than rehabilitative, one advocate said, a sentiment echoed in the lawsuits, criminal charges, and countless inmate complaints. At Edna Mahan, the real danger doesn't just come from rival inmates, it comes from the very people paid to enforce the rules. For New Jersey, it's a painful reminder that when power goes unchecked, even locked doors can't protect those trapped inside.
A manhunt is in progress for escaped inmate Arthur Buckle. The 38-year-old New Jersey inmate who killed his girlfriend's 10-month-old baby 20 years ago escaped from prison Tuesday, just weeks before he was due for parole on separate charges. Arthur Buckle appears to be heading north up the coast after busting out of a Winslow Township-based satellite location of Bayside State Prison. He was spotted Wednesday morning at a CVS in Barnegat Township, about 50 miles northeast from where he escaped.
Bayside State Prison, a quieter name compared to New Jersey's notorious facilities, still has its own dark history. Located near Cape May, this medium-security prison, originally a farm complex, has seen violence and corruption that shattered any illusion of safety. In November 2024, federal court records exposed two disturbing incidents from late 2019. In one, a group of inmates beat another prisoner to death while correctional officer Joshua Hand stood by and did nothing. Days later, the same officer ignored a fellow guard viciously assaulting an inmate with a broomstick. Prosecutors called it a blatant abuse of power. Hand pleaded guilty to violating the prisoner's civil rights and was sentenced to 20 months behind bars for depriving the victims of their right not to be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. The cases sent a clear message. Even New Jersey's lesser-known prisons were not immune to brutality and systemic failure. Bayside also struggled with rampant contraband smuggling. In 2018, a sergeant admitted to taking bribes to sneak H and other drugs into the prison yard. Like its larger counterparts, Bayside remains a battleground for gangs, from East Coast organized crime families to smaller cellblock crews, who maintain control through fear and violence. Veteran guards talk of midnight searches for razor blades hidden in pillows and chocolates laced with Fenty. Inmates whisper about a so-called prison judiciary, an underground system where prisoners enforce their own brutal rules, fueled by deep distrust of the staff. Though Bayside is set to be merged into South Woods and Southern State by 2025, its stories remain etched in memory. Families of former inmates still recount fights breaking out in the dining halls, ambushes in the kitchens, and a constant sense of danger where survival often depended on who you knew or how fast you could fight back. Trenton's New Jersey State Prison stands like a battered fortress. Built in 1836, its thick sandstone walls and looming guard towers still dominate the neighborhood. Inside, narrow corridors from the original 19th century fortress clash with newer maximum security wings, but the atmosphere remains the same, tense and dangerous. Rumors spread fast, alliances form and break overnight, and even mundane work details can turn bloody. In 2020, Latin Kings members inside the prison organized a hit squad, brutally attacking another inmate during yard time and leaving him with a traumatic brain injury. Corrections intelligence later uncovered plans for a second assault at Newark's Northern State Prison, foiled only when officers moved the target. Violence isn't limited to inmates. Over the decades, correctional officers have also been targets. One infamous case from the early 1970s saw a sergeant fatally stabbed while guarding the mess hall, a story that still echoes in the minds of today's officers. Guards remain on constant knife watch, scanning both inmates and each other. Staff brutality complaints are also common. According to the state ombudsman, Hundreds of prisoners file reports each year alleging beatings by guards and assaults by other inmates. Lockdowns are frequent, tensions explode over small disputes, and the stone hallways often echo with shouts and fights. Trenton's New Jersey State Prison is a place where survival is uncertain and danger never sleeps. Across New Jersey's prison system, from Trenton to Newark, Bridgeton to Rahway, Clinton to Leesburg, the headlines read like chapters out of a crime novel. Known gang leaders cycle from one prison to the next, reviving old vendettas. Drugs slip through in stabbings, bribes, or corrupt guards. Weapons surface where they shouldn't. The Department of Corrections has added more cameras, rolled out body cams, and launched tougher internal investigations. But deep-rooted problems persist: chronic understaffing, federal court orders, and the overwhelming pressure of managing tens of thousands of inmates make meaningful reform painfully slow. What makes these prisons the most dangerous isn't one thing, it's everything combined. A stolen glance turns into a stabbing. A dirty officer hands off a blade. A failed escape shows just how thin the line is between order and chaos. Today, corrections officials tread carefully, watchdogs demand more transparency, and families hope their loved ones make it through another day inside. The brutal stories from Trenton's fortress walls, Newark's crumbling towers, Bridgeton's alleged fight club, Rahway's knife-ridden cell blocks, and Clinton's violent uprisings will continue to shape how New Jersey and the country views justice behind bars for years to come.